I'm Ann Gilbert, the director of Arkansas Transit Association, and like Adam, it's so good to see all of you in person. Thank you for being here. Before I introduce our first speaker, I'd like to tell you that in the middle of the room is a microphone. So if you have any questions, please go to the microphone so that it'll be captured virtually. Right there by Danny Heidelberg. Well, during the last 2 years, COVID has created massive labor shortages. And one of the biggest issues you face is finding new drivers and keeping them. We know there's a lot of competition for drivers between trucking companies, public transportation, and school districts. So we brought the best trainer in the transportation business to offer you some proven tips and strategies for hiring and retaining these critical frontline workers. With a business degree from Stonehill College in Massachusetts, Karen Souza started her career as a human resources manager at Macy's, where she designed and developed customer service training programs. In 1994, she became the membership director of the Community Transportation Association of America, or CTAA. And she's worked tirelessly to promote the association and its mission to better meet the needs of its members. Since 2018, Karen has served as CTAA's Training and Certification Program Director. Her training team has expanded CTAA's training, certification, and online courses in the virtual format around a variety of topics. 6 months ago, she was named Deputy Executive Director of CTAA. We're honored to have with us Karen Souza from Washington, D.C. Please welcome Karen.
Thanks so much, Ann, and I'm happy to see all of you here today. This is a favorite topic of mine because for, I would say, a good solid 15 years or so, across the country, so many agencies have been reaching out to us during those times where we all miss, where it was better in terms of our having the ability to hire, train, and develop people in all positions in our organization, and also through these challenging times that you all been encountering during this time of COVID. And I know for those of you who've been doing this work for many decades, there have been some other relatable times in terms of hard economies and trying to hire people. And yet, collectively, our voices being shared with each other in this room are going to help all of us, because I'm going to start us really on a very positive note here, I feel. The most positive part I can say is that the work that we do and what it means in your communities and how essential it is always stays at the forefront of who we're trying to hire, doesn't it? We want to hire people who relate to the work that we do. I don't know if last week any of you attended a seminar that CTA put on, a webinar called Women in Transit. If you were able to listen to that webinar, the focus on what it is that, as a community, women are looking for to be employed in the transit field, and also it covered men as well, was decades worth of collective data from the University of South Florida, who did this study and analysis. And what I took away from it, in terms of when you're thinking of looking in all your communities of who you're looking for from drivers, is that when it came to talking about women in transit, the overall studies and research showed that the words community and communal and their interaction with each other is what overall women in transit were looking for, and was relatable to them as much as you could put that out in the work that you do in hiring. In this case, we're focusing on drivers. So in terms of that capability of looking at different ways to approach people working for us, please think of the advertising that you're doing and what you're putting out there that to a whole segment of the population, women, this research collectively said any way you could connect your driver position to the work that someone's doing in their community and feeling a part of that communal aspect of it mattered to women, and the data proved it. I also would like you to think of another part of drivers and what we're looking for within that community, and that is this aspect of it. That there should be, and we should be, taking the ability of describing what we're looking for in drivers and say to ourselves, one ad does not fit all. One size does not fit all. We should be looking to creating our descriptions on our websites, through our social media, and in any way you're reaching out, whether it works for you to use newspapers still, whether it's something that works if you have something where you have it in your community church bulletin, whether it's something where you're using Facebook Meta, you're using Indeed.com, whatever that is, different ads to reach different drivers that you're looking for. No longer does one ad work for us. It's not possible to connect with the variety of ways that people are looking to come back to employment or that you're looking to retain if it's just one message said in one way that you expect will splash across your community and everybody will say, I'm interested in that. I see myself doing that. That's me. So, having said that, let's take a little bit of look together at some aspects of this. This is a very interactive session, I want to let you know. Your ideas are of value, I know, across the work you do, as much as what I hear nationally, which I'm going to share all of that with you, of course. But when it comes to really focusing on what all of you have found working, I'd like to start in that positive way. So the question I'm throwing out for anyone to answer to is, what is working for you today when it comes to trying to recruit drivers and having them to work for you? What is it you've tried that you're either beginning to see is starting to have people come to interview with you or is really actively working? Anything you'd like to share before, like I said, I can share that national perspective? Who's replying? How are they replying? What is it that got them engaged? Let me see if I can take. So, what I'm hearing, and we'll see if this sparks with some of what you're thinking of. What I'm hearing right now is the use of Indeed. How many of you, by a show of hands in this room, use Indeed right now? Almost all of you. Okay. Knowing that you're using Indeed, there's the pay for side of Indeed, where you're paying the fee, and there's the free side of Indeed. How many of you are using the pay for? Has that worked for you? Have you worked with the Indeed staff? You're paying money if you are doing the pay for side of Indeed. And you're paying for that expert. You should have one assigned person at Indeed, and if they haven't done that, you should reach out to them. And you say to Indeed, I'm trying to hire driver positions, here's my ad. Can you look at it with me? Which is what they will do. When they look at that ad with you, what you want to hear from them is, and you should see in your data that it shows how many people responded to that ad, right? How many did actually decide to apply? When you look at who's applied, or how many, you should also say to them, they have expertise in this. People using Indeed are looking for keywords. They're not looking in the old school classified ad way at a title of something. They're looking for keywords that stand out to them. If women in transit that I mentioned were looking for keywords, they'd say, our drivers help people in the community. They like to get people where they need to go. I mean, something like that. And so a keyword that the women in your community saw was community that mattered to them. And so you want to use the pay for expertise when you do pay for Indeed to also say to them, they know how many people hovered over your ad but didn't open it. how many hovered over your ad and looked at it, and they know how many seconds they even looked at it before they bailed. How many of them looked at it, and on your Indeed area, there's a link always in Indeed to link to where your application is, right? On all your Indeed ads. So how many actually clicked and opened that application? Those are things they're not going to volunteer to you, but I want you to know those are the things you have the right to know when you're in a pay-for environment. The next thing you want to ask that person is, so I also need to know, should this ad, in your opinion, have words and emphasis in a different way to get people's attention? I wrote it to the best of my ability, but you have the expertise. You see millions of ads coming through your portals. So what is it that I need to show and feature here that will look different than maybe any way I've ever written an ad before? But then you're going to follow up and you're going to say, I'm going to be getting back to you and I want to see how many hovers, how many opens, how many went to the application. I need to have you prove to me in my pay for that all that's going on, right? So we are here to use the tools that maybe you're comfortable with or not comfortable with. For those of you on the Indeed free ad side, I mean, it's good to try free ads. Who wouldn't like to have a free ad and have a lot of people looking at it? So you're not going to get all that data on the pay for side. Also paying for an ad on Indeed, which I do recommend trying more than once. Don't be one and done if it doesn't always pull the first time. Nothing should be one and done when you're using social media anyway. Keep trying, keep tweaking, keep trying to get to where you want to be, where you're getting the pull you want. But the key part of our comfort level, whether it's really strong or not, is that in getting that information out and clicking to your application, still remember that if you're not comfortable or you say, in my community, Karen, I don't think people use social media the way you are describing. That's yesterday's news, because today they are, because COVID brought everybody to the social world, media world, whether they liked it or not, and they're using it and they're looking at it in ways that we may not recognize, but we need to. So to the best of our ability, when we're talking about looking to recruit drivers and source drivers and all of that important part, the fundamentals are really there when it comes to the best use of the tools we have. So in sharing that, as I said, one of the key things is, whether it's Indeed or another major aggregator, because Indeed is just what we call in the old school world of my day, a job board. They hate to be called that, but that's what they are. So every time you have an ad that goes up on your website, they have thousands upon thousands of employees that are grabbing your ads, and they're throwing it up on Indeed whether you want them to or not. They don't care. They're a job board. That's their job. So if you have a mechanics opening or whatever you have, dispatchers, they're going to grab it, throw it up on their job board, and put it wherever they want. Remember, when you're paying for it, you're trying to get it where you want, so it's being seen and eyeballs on it. So if you're ever thinking of, maybe I should consider paying for something in Indeed, make sure you get that one assigned person to work with you, and you have them work with you and for you in what you're paying for, and take some of those skill sets to analyze. How does my job look? What are the keywords? Another part I'm going to jump to here. In your advertising, when you're looking at titles of jobs, if you're using terms in your description like paratransit, operator, I got to tell you, nobody outside the industry knows what the heck you're talking about, would they? ADA? I don't know. Right? So you see, I keep using driver, right? Driver, 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 because that's what the general public would understand. They have to know more by looking at your ad of what they're driving or what they're doing, don't they? But they certainly, at the moment, wouldn't understand those terms or what that means, nor should they if they haven't ever worked in the industry before. So generalize your job title of what you're calling that position you have. So you might want to integrate the name of your agency, and you might want to say driver for blah, 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 not the standard. I was always told, Karen, it was a easy to understand snapshot of the job, paratransit driver. That you can add and say the name of your agency if you want to into it. However you want that to look doesn't have to be an old school, as I call it, way anymore, because that's not how people are reading ads that they're looking at now, whether it's just going to your website or any other approach that they're doing. So, to be competitive, you've been forced, we've all been forced across the country to have something that's a starting salary that's more competitive in the market, right? I mean, we all know that. Where we were before the pandemic isn't where we are now with our salaries. And the other thing is, we have to be very careful of what's called wage compression. That human resource term, wage compression, is hiring someone new in that's close to the level of your long-term employees who've been with you a long time. We all know in this room, 100% of us, people do talk about their wages and salaries. I don't care what your policy is or what we say, or they shouldn't do it. Please. That's not realistic. So, if you haven't done it, you should make sure that you're looking if there's any adjustments you should do to long-term people's salaries as well as you're bringing new people in, because they read it too, they see it out there, and they might be thinking, wow, I do love working here, it's awesome, it's great, I am happy here, but I'm a little resentful that I'm like only X amount of, dollars, a dollar above where everybody new's coming in. I've been here and through COVID and all that good stuff for a long time. So be sensitive to that. By a show of hands, how many of you have anyone who works, you have like a personnel HR department in your organization at all? Okay, about half the room does. I'll say this about myself as a former, like at Macy's you heard, but HR person, and had about 750 to 1,000 people working in the store I worked in that reported to us, and I had assistant HR people and payroll people. I had like a staff of like 8 people. But that's not the point I'm making. The point is everyone on the team had to understand the process side of what we did to support the work that all of you are doing trying to hire someone. And I would say in almost every case, what was done pre-COVID on the process side to hire someone, process meaning, the paperwork that's done and going over the benefits that are done and how we interviewed people and the process we did around that. I can't imagine it's the same for all of you in most cases anymore. I don't think it realistically is. Yet I might have all these processes that I spent years developing as an HR person. I got it all in that sweet spot for me. And now it's not working for you anymore. And most people would say to me, oh, my HR person's very like, this is the way it's done. There's no flexibility, Karen. They're like on that lane. And I don't know, I can get them to work with me. You're going to have to. I have to. I am part of the team in helping you hire the drivers you're trying to hire. So if I'm putting up certain barriers saying it has to be done this way and this takes X amount of days and that's too many days because I'm going to lose someone, then you have to get me to go to your side. Oh, good try, Karen. If you work with a city or a county or a government agency, they're going to say to me, oh, that's so nice to hear that. I'm not doing it because that's the way the county wants me to do it. There are some ways we're going to have to negotiate as if you were negotiating someone to hire them for a certain salary. What can we do to meet in the middle? This is a pain point for us, whatever that pain point is. And I'm not willing to accept that that barrier to me hiring someone and losing them time after time is going to be okay. It's time for us to talk as a team about the impacts that this has on what we're doing. So when you're looking at your starting salary competitive for your market as much as you can be, I think the key part in what I'm pointing out here that you already know is make sure there's no wage compression and traditional benefits. Younger people, have you found really don't care about those traditional benefits, what the pension is, no, they're just like, well, that's nice to know, but I don't need it. It doesn't matter to me. So what I put up there were the words like cafeteria benefits. Well, I don't know what that is, Karen. What the heck is that? So maybe some of the things you might find is what I've heard from your peers across the country. These cafeterias, that's just a term in the HR world. You don't have to call them that. But, this variety of benefits might be something like this. We want our drivers, many of them have challenges across the industry in terms of good health. So maybe you contacted your local YMCA, Planet Fitness, fill in the blank of the gym, or there's a couple gyms in your area, and you negotiated with them and said to them, I have X amount of employees at my organization. I'd like to see if I could have us waive the initiation fee. I'd like to see if I could contract and have something available at a more reasonable, rate of paying the monthly fee. And I want to have that as one of my suite or cafeteria of things that are available to new hires that I'm hiring. You might say, as someone said to me, I try to promote good health, so I did the gym thing, but I still have the candy soda machines that are available for drivers in my driver rooms, not exactly healthy. But the money that's collected from that, we've always told everyone, that's to be used as a benefit for the employees, and they would decide what it's used for. So they used to do a once-a-year party, whatever. But in this case, they said, what else can we do with this money that you would like? Not just always thinking food, celebrate, which has its place, and we'll still do that. I'm not eliminating it. What else would you like to do? Well, one of them said, the driver room we have, it's nice and everything, but it's loud all the time. What? Yeah, it's loud all the time. TV on, stuff going on. Can we have a quiet room? Somewhere where we could just chill out a little without all the noise. Well, she said, the only thing I literally had was a closet. A long closet, kind of narrow. You could get some chairs in there and a table. I thought they probably don't want that, but I asked them and they said, could you take some of that money and get some nice paint and a color we vote on that we like? Sure. So on it, you get the idea. They began to put that out to the drivers, and they came up with their own ideas, and they said, we want to donate some of our own books. We're going to have a little reading room, quiet, no TV in here. Chill out when you want, don't, whatever you want to do. So they said, this is now something we promote as, if people know our industry and how drivers' rooms typically are, we said we have a quiet space if that's what you want too. They said, you might think, what's that big deal of a benefit? It seemed to matter to most of my drivers, they wanted it. So we put that up there as another offering of something special that you might not find. And so the more that we think of things that you might think, that's a benefit, but to many people, that would make them very happy in their work environment. Their work environment is what they're looking for, not just the literal pension plan, vacation time. I know vacation matters, those kind of things. Some agencies said, we began to talk about the dreaded word schedule, part-time, full-time, union, non-union. How do we have something where we're trying to get a better capability of scheduling? Some agencies did the hard work and really dove in and said, well, we're at the point now where we have very minimal part-time schedules. We wound up having, during the time of COVID, to put things together more in a full-time capability to get people and not lose them. I know that's hard work. I know if people are in union environments, that means a whole different major discussion about unions and new employees coming in and getting the worst shift that nobody's liked in the history of our time working here. And yet, that's where all new people start. And I'm shocked and amazed you're not. How many people decide that's not for me and want to leave? So when we're thinking about unusual benefits, it could be something like saying, a couple more ideas nationally I heard, things like the groups in some agencies decided they wanted to have something where they had a support of they liked books, so they had this book exchange once a year. They liked having the ability to have their bosses cook one meal a year for them. They chose a holiday, and that said, you work for us today. You cook for us. There's a whole suite of things that you might think, is that really that important to people? Well, clearly the rest of the traditional benefits aren't. So how do you get the ideas of what drivers want or what others want? You have a committee. You have some drivers on there. You let them share some of those ideas with you. You collect it. And then you see what can we do about that? And that might be a new benefit you come up with. That's how many agencies approached it. Not top down. Actually, the driver's telling them. So salary and benefits and being competitive. You can't pay those bonuses, can you? That people sometimes throw out saying, I did get someone, but the bonus was X from these other companies. We just can't be that competitive that way. But we've had to analyze to increase our pay. So thinking about what we can offer, it's about the culture and the work environment, isn't it? And do people relate to the work and what we do and how that comes across. Remember what we started with. I started talking about websites and vision and what people are seeing and can they relate to that so they want to apply. Here's another thought that's really critical that is proven to be true, and the feedback comes directly from those who oversee all the social media connections. If your application takes more than 3 minutes to complete, people bail and they won't finish it. And even worse than that, when I talk to Indeed and the people at the highest level, when I said about working with Indeed, they won't tell you everything, but they will on behalf of the industry, they told us. They said they're never coming back to your website. I said, never? They said it's proven never coming back again. It's like, whoa, I mean, nobody likes to hear that. So, I mean you set a timer. I mean you take a regular person who's, on your staff to fill that out and do it yourself. Is it taking 3 minutes or less to complete this application? Well, Karen, that sounds all good in theory. I'll give that a try even. But I've been told by my lovely HR people, making fun of myself, that this is the application, this is how it looks, this is how it'll be filled out, and that's going to take more than 3 minutes. I already know it. Well, what you can do is I want you to negotiate with HR person here, and I want you to say, let's come upon the most critical things that we agree upon that have to be filled out on that application online that we're doing. And then in interviewing that person, if we want them and we want to hire them, I'll make them fill out that whole big, long, lovely thing that has to be done. I'm not denying it has to get done. That's one of the contingencies of them being hired is to fill out that, I'm not dismissing what you want. I can't because I have to do it. But it doesn't have to be the first impression and the first thing I'm filling out. So get that 3 minutes worth, no more than that, of filling out that application and test it and just say, I think that takes about 3 minutes. Please make sure it does so that I will fill it out if I'm interested, which is what you need me to do. And who is reviewing that application? If you're a small agency, I don't have any department, Karen. Remember, half of us in the room didn't have our hand up that we have this whole department area. So who is assigned to review that application? And right now you have to be on top of it as quickly as possible. So who's assigned to do that, and what is the process they follow? Is the process they text someone to acknowledge I've received it and we'd like to talk with you? I hate texting. I would hate to get texts. It's not about you and me and what we like. It's what most people are used to now is texting is just a norm. So are you going to text them and say, hi, I'm interested, I'm contacting from here, and what's going to go in that standard message to everyone? Is that message going to say what I would say, which is, I have the following openings. Would you like to come to interview? I have one tomorrow at 3. I have one on Friday at this time. I have one. You're going to direct a day and a time to someone to come to meet with you. And if they're not available, oh gosh, I wish I could come. You're communicating. Oh good, they're still interested. But tell me what time you could come then. I mean, you're just trying to get someone to react and respond and reply quickly and not have them do that phrase that we all hate, which is ghost you. You thought they wanted to be contacted. You reached out to contact them, but it's got to be immediate. So is it going to be by text? Is it going to be by email? Is it going to be something where you're calling? Have a structure and a system? Who's assigned? Smaller agencies. I'm taking Mondays. You're going to take Tuesdays for us. You're going to take Wednesdays. You're going to take Thursdays to reply. You're on Fridays to reply, right? And our reply system is already established and known by us. We have to have the process to back up what we're trying to do, don't we? Right. So the same thing a full-time HR person would do, or whoever else on your staff and your team is assigned to help an interview on certain days. Are you doing phone interviews? By a show of hands, how many of you are doing phone interviews? Not enough of you. How many are you doing interviews by Zoom or any other capability? I don't care what it is, Google Meets or whatever. Okay, not enough of you again. We have to be that fast. You're trying to capture people, right? We all are. And if we are letting them go by, they're on to the next, aren't they? Next, 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 next. So we have to have our thoughts and our processes and our work all engaged within that quicker response to not lose me when I'm interested. Yes, you're going to still lose some. We all know that. I mean, that's how it goes. But this is how we're capturing when it's so hard right now to get people to even reply. And we don't want to lose that moment, that momentum, that interest from someone. So please take the time when you go back, when you're saying I call it a task-oriented list, where you would say under recruitment, my task is when I go back to the office, we're going to meet as a team, or whoever's working on this with us, and we're going to get into how do we immediately respond to people who are, thank God, finally replying to something of ours, filling out an application, calling, whatever they're reaching us. What is the structure around that? Because it has to be structured or it just gets away from you. Just before COVID, it wasn't that long ago, that I was called into an agency who couldn't do pullout. And they couldn't do pullout, didn't have enough staff to do what they needed to do, and they were at a crisis point. And when I went in there with them, I said, all top leaders were around the table, just like this, and we were getting into very nitty-gritty things that I think they all looked at me like, I didn't think that's what she was going to try to discuss with us. But I do know from experience, and it's proven, my analogy back in those years was Christmas time. I had to hire an extra about 300 people, and I had 3 weeks to hire 300 people. And they're representing that particular company, so I can't just say yes to you breathe, you're breathing, you come, right? I still have to do good work to hire the best I can. And so in doing that, it was all about structure and process and immediate reply. Back in those days, never did anybody have that kind of structure around that. But nowadays, most people do. So we have to be up with the competition. We're trying our best with the best we can do with salaries, and it only goes so far. So we have to show our interest to someone, and the only way is that immediacy of letting me know that. Okay? So I don't want you to feel discouraged. I want you to feel encouraged, because these are things we can manage, we can control, we can structure around, because this is such a priority for us, as we know. So when we move beyond salary and benefits to be competitive, I think the key part, and on the next part is, so looking critically at your website. How many of you have recently hired new drivers that are still with you? I'm not trying to be a wise guy in saying that, but it's still with you. Okay, ask their opinion. What do you think of our website? What did it draw you to immediately knowing where to find the openings, what web page I connected to? Did that have any relevance or meaning to you at all? Okay, their impressions of newly hired people matter as much as your long-term people. I'm not saying to dismiss long-term people who've worked for you. I think if you ask them, they'd have an opinion too. But for those who you hired and are working for you now, take that knowledge and ask them, how did it look? When we talked about drivers, I have encouraged many agencies to create their own driver webpage, because that's the most openings you have. You can do this with any position. But right now, with drivers being the critical point, creating a driver webpage that's easy to find, and on there is where I encourage you to do the following. What people are looking for, no matter what age, is to see someone they can relate to. And so they're looking to see in something that has the pictures and the video, not always the words. They're looking to authentically see someone who's currently a driver of yours. So if you featured a newly hired driver, a veteran driver, and you took, I shut it off, didn't I, Scott? My cell phone, my phone, so it wouldn't ring. But if you took your phone, it doesn't have to be a Hollywood production at all or high quality. But if you took your phone, my Apple phone has a record button, and I ahead of time had a few of those drivers and said, you know what? I really would like to feature you as our driver of the week, driver of the quarter, driver of the month or something. And I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I'd just like you to just answer them, and let's practice it ahead of time before I hit this record button. What do you like about what you did? You've been with us a few weeks now. What's been surprising about what you do? What's made you smile, on a particular day? Something that authentically shows a driver in that environment. Because if I've never worked in public transit at all, even with all your interview questions, even with everything you described to me, even with the situational questions you asked me to let me see what it'd be like in that situation and what would I do, I don't know till I'm really out there, do I? I don't. But if I can authentically then say, I've been here for a few weeks or a month, And, I really like this or that, or, and genuine. I mean, I also say that it's authentic if someone says, I was really nervous in the beginning. I went through the training. I thought, can I do this? And now that I've been doing this for, you know what I mean? I mean, someone authentically saying some things that are true, not just some Hollywood version of what it means to be a driver, and somebody seeing that on a video that takes roughly 45 seconds for them to see, most people will say, that speaks more to me than what your website shows as a total, because I can relate to that person and I see them. So I see that woman in transit being featured. I see the diversity of your workforce. I see different ages and ranges. I feel overall who I'm working with, I can see them, I can relate to them. It's not just some guess in my mind of what that's like. So have them sitting on their vehicle. They're parked there, they're turned toward you, and that's their office, right? That's going to be their office as they're driving, and have them being featured in the vehicle, not just sitting, in a room with a nice wall behind them all looking, rigid like that. But if you have uniforms that are warm, or the authentic things that you do. This is what people are looking for to validate when they're thinking of wanting to work for you. I can see what's required in this job, how it looks. And like I said, it's more authentic to take a cell phone. It might jiggle and jitter a little bit than to have something that looks all produced and kind of fake to people. They want to see what truly it looks like. I know that you have people, if it's not your thing, who would say, if you ask them to, well, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to take our phone here. Now, some of you have a little lovely stand, which helps a little more to keep it steady, and you have a little tripod thing, and you can set it up. But please take advantage of this. This is to support what you're saying it means to be a driver, what a driver says about their experience as a driver, and let's feature that and make sure on your websites and on your social media, so Indeed.com, back to your free ads or your pay-fors. So there's your description of the driver position. There's the link to the application, and there's the link to the video. All right there in what people open up at the top. These are key things that resonate more than saying, I went to the website, and I found such and such an area where it was located. No, you want your own driver page and brand it. Now, in some communities during COVID, what I also heard was there was a fear, Karen, and a concern about wearing masks, what's required for that, and so forth. So one day, I was talking with this agency, and I said the same thing I would say to any of you. If it's something you realize is some kind of barrier or concern, pretending it's not there doesn't make it go away. So instead, they took their phone and did an authentic look at a couple of their drivers who were wearing masks and people getting on the vehicles with masks and showing the experience. Now, they had a little more money and a little more video capability, so they had some words going across it. They weren't just speaking, and they were explaining a little more what was going on so people wouldn't kind of be scratching their heads or confused. But this was their way, and I asked them then 3 weeks later, I said, I'll call you in about 3 weeks. Have people been looking at it? When you interview people, what's your feedback on it? Can you include a question as part of your interview asking them about this new video you did around mask wearing? And they said, yeah, absolutely, I'll do that. I'll do it for our sake and for you. So when I talked to them 3 weeks later in that capacity about safety and video wearing, I said, did most people notice that or look at that video? They said, more people looked at that video than I actually thought would. We branded it as letting people know that's what they're going to see before they open the link. And we talked about it briefly in the interviews, which I would have anyway, but it kind of spoke for itself. And then we had a more natural, relaxed conversation about it, rather than in the past, people seemed a little tense, I thought, a little worked up. They weren't sure what to think. Now they already saw it, so it was easier to talk about it, quite honestly. So think of that in any capacity of anything you do. If something in your community where you're hearing certain things in interviews where you're saying, wow, seems to be this is something people are uncomfortable or happy with, whatever it is, or positively, let's talk that way. What can I feature that's relatable that people will see? So think of your website, look at it again. If I today said, all of you, open up your web pages right now, let me look at it, and I'm going to be a driver, and I'm going to apply, and I'm going to look for it, what would my experience be like? Many of you are saying, not so good. So rethink that, look at it, make it friendly, have something you brand as your driver's page. So anyone who comes upon your website, anyone who's opening up your links is going to where you want them to be focusing on. They're applying for a driver position, and that's what you want them to see. Yes, I agree. You want them to know the history of what you do. I mean, there's a lot of good things, but don't overwhelm what you have there either. You know, keep it within the lane of, I'm trying to hire someone, and this is what my current drivers I recently hired told me mattered to them and what they were looking for. You're going to hear some things where you're not doing some of those things now either, right? You might talk to some of those new drivers and say, well, now that you're asking, honestly, I wish you did this or I wish there was that. Okay, can we do something about it in the future? Maybe not today, but it gives you other things to consider for future look at employment, benefits, or whatever it might be. It's all to the good. It's a winning situation. So, how many of you by a show of hands have an employee referral program? Okay, a few of you do, about 5, 6, 7 of you. Do you use it? Is it worthwhile to have it? Okay, a couple of you say yes, it is. So, employee referral programs are what you're trying to do is you have someone good working for you, who, you know, you're hoping they're going to want to bring someone else in they know. And as long as they pass that traditional probation period, is what everybody says, got to have that person successfully pass probation, then they're going to have some amount of money assigned to that person for doing that. If you have an employee referral program, sometimes you're going to need to boost that amount of money, just as comparable to boosting up wages and other things. Maybe that amount of money that really did work before, $250 may have been, that's a typical one I hear, a range from $100 to $300. Maybe you need to boost it up a little more, but you want to emphasize that we're looking for good people just like you. And if you have someone in mind, we commit, we will interview them. Even if you look at their background, you say, oh boy, that's not quite what I was looking for. But you know, when you have an internal referral, you want to have the courtesy of doing that. I think that's very key. So after you've interviewed that person and you follow your processes like you always do, again, let's say it's a hire, good hire, they pass probation again. You could do something where you have your staff meeting and everybody comes and you have someone stand in front of the group and say, thanks so much for that referral. We're so happy to have Susan here with us. And so in recognition of that, and show to everyone, here's your check, your credit card, your gift card, whatever you're doing. Most people say cash, right, versus gift card. But you want to let everybody know we really have an active employee referral program and that we're demonstrating that to everyone, that it's active and ongoing. All you need to do at the time of the application is have that person's name. You know, try to remember to tell us or jot it down on the application. You have a box on the application, who referred you, or if you don't have that currently in the application and you have an employee referral program, have that added there so they don't have to verbally come up to you. I am a strong proponent of employee referral programs. It's underutilized. And it has proven for many agencies to be successful, even though you might think, well, they know we have open jobs. For gosh sakes, do we have to have that? Yes, you do, because it works. Some agencies, a few of them, not many, say, actually, for longevity and to reinforce longevity, at that annual time, I also have not as much money we're offering, but to still continue thanking, we still give to the person who was referred a recognition of, most of them do gift cards by then, but of X amount and we announce it. You know, that referral that Bob gave, Susan's still here, we're so glad, applause, and so forth. So you can reinforce that if you so desire to that be a long-term recognition, because that small amount of money matters in the overall retention rate of someone referred. So, if you want to know more about employee referral programs, let me know. They're very easy to develop and design around and have that ability to reach out to everyone. We've talked about social media and the pay-for side and targeting to different audiences. So if you have military veterans, you know, and you're saying we don't connect to them well. Or you're thinking to yourself that even though many of you, by a show of hands, how many of you have had proportionally more retirees in your driver workforce? Okay, and I don't know if that's still maintaining for you now, because many people have said to me, it's changed now, Karen. I'm not having that same volume that I used to have. Or there might be another workforce sector that you had. How many of you have foreign languages, not just Spanish in the example I gave here, but foreign languages? We have a community of people in your areas that speak foreign languages that could be driving for you. Are your applications in that language? That's key. Is it featured in your website on your driver page? I'm encouraging you. No kidding, Karen, you keep hitting us over the head with the driver page development, but in that area, so it's easy to see and find. So to target different audiences, is your application in that language? Many people told us that they didn't think of the application part. They still had that in English. But again, to have a connection to that particular community. I put registered nurses up there and first responders, those two audiences. It amazed me that one agency has such an extremely strong connection with first responders and specifically their fire department. So they said many people who don't pass the physicals anymore, required to be doing especially fire department work, but still have what? The love and compassion and commitment to the community that you do and the work you do. So they went ahead, and every time they had a retirement, they did a presentation about coming to work for us in transit. And they said, we have had a 15-year pipeline of first responders from the fire department coming to us after our presentations, a certain number, who understand our work, are doing the same physical load of what they have to do for that work, and are committed to that community, and they don't go away, and they bring others on board, and we have a strong employee referral program from that. All because of that one community. The other is nursing, and those who are traveling nurses. We've heard more and more, I think you all have, that many hospitals are filling their positions with traveling nurses now. And they're going across the country and going to an area where there's a need and earning more salary for doing that. But there are also those communities we know who are providing nursing services, and they go to nursing homes and other places. Their schedules are as variable as yours are, 100% in that lane. And so that morning, they're taking their cell phone and keying in and seeing, how many homes am I going to today? Maybe none that day. Maybe only a couple. And they're being paid on a per visit basis. I talked to them because my family needed that kind of assistance from nursing for my family. And I was talking with someone there, and I said, if we had a consistency of schedule, you know, you knew ahead of time, working at it and providing services where I explained what transit agencies do, and they said they were interested. I said, if you had your schedule and you were knowing your variable schedule with the transit agency, you know, part-time hours, they said, this would be perfect for me. I would then, when I get that schedule in the morning on the nursing side, have already had my committed schedule for that week or whatever it was for my part-time hours. And then I'd say yes to anything else to fill it in, and I'd be earning more money overall. I'm not getting enough hours on the nursing side, but I would have the consistency of the driver side. I said, I thought so. I thought that was the missing link here in what's going on in Florida in this particular community. So we have to ourselves sometimes think of these other areas like nursing, relating to patients, doing ADA work, paratransit work. They're driving all the time with their own vehicles. Now they're using our vehicles. They have that kind of schedule that not everybody loves if you still have such a heavily part-time part. Yet they would know, again, that commitment and getting their pay from that, and then fit in the rest of the things they say yes to around it. So it's something to consider. Now, social media and job boards, we've done an overview of that. And we've talked about advertising. How many of you advertise for your openings inside your vehicles? Should be 100% of us, shouldn't it? and having an application on the vehicle. Or some drivers, when I talked to some drivers in Arizona, said, we asked for business cards from our general manager. I said, you did? What did you ask to have on them? Well, the website and the link to where the application is, and on the other side to say, you know, drivers wanted or needed, whatever they wanted to put there, and call this number. It was a special number that they invested in that only is a number to call when you want to be interviewed. So they knew that we gave the business cards out as we chatted with people as it came up in our conversations. And when they dialed that number, even if it wasn't answered live, which it wasn't a lot of the time, but that was okay. But there was a special message on there. Thank you for calling us. We want to talk to you. Please leave a message of how to reach you by phone, text, or whatever way you want, you know, and we'll get back to you within. And they said nowadays it was too long a window, but at the time it was within 24 hours. And that's what they always did. They checked it every morning when they came in, picked up messages, and called. So the drivers actively at that agency in Arizona said, we want to be part of the solution. We know there are open jobs. How can we help? So again, inside the vehicle, yes, it was showing they were looking for drivers. Another agency in Arizona also went and featured some of their drivers on the wraps around their buses. They were recognized by people who use the service. Yeah, that's my driver there going by saying we're looking for good drivers. And they said, as people came on board, they would ask us a question or two. Of course they would. Or just a good, hey, look at you being, you know, recognized there, you know, something like that. But they decided to authentically feature their drivers because they had investment on wrap buses, and they decided to take some of their money and wrap it around their bus. How many of you advertise outside your buses looking for? Good. So it should be inside and outside. And an application or a link to something based on, some people will fill out a paper application, some won't, we know. But no matter how that is, specialized business cards, I loved it that agency's driver said, we're here to work with you to make this happen. We talked about the realistic videos, how critical it is, and you can't see that yellow. Gosh, did I learn a lesson there in a room that has a lot of bright lights that you'd be like, I have no idea what that SCR driver. That was a link to an authentic video. If you said, I've heard your words around it, I'd like to see an actual video, Karen, that authentically featured it. And if you do a Google search and you put SCR driver, that's the agency's initials, and you just went to Google and did that, it will bring you up to that video. And that video in their case runs about 1 minute and 40 seconds. It's a little higher quality production. They had some words that some marketing department also included in it, not just featuring the driver, but it shows that driver experience. So if you wanted an example of what something looks like, I think you'd see a nice one if you look and you do that Google look at HCR driver. So since a picture speaks 1,000 words, since we're agreeing that, I hope you are, that featuring who's on your workforce and how they're going to be shown leads me to have you, let's talk about some recruiting ideas. How many of you, I'm sure almost all of you, have been to a job fair, whoever sponsors it, whoever you're partnering with, just by a show of hands, have yourself participated in job fairs? How many during COVID time have there been? One of you, which two of you? Have you ever thought of holding your own job fair and not having it sponsored with anyone else? This is something where you would be doing it where you don't have to be still face-to-face with people if that's not what you want to do or what the approach is you want to have. Oh, I held hundreds of them back in my day of job fairs on my site. And I was looking for part-time evening people. So I held the interviews and had every one of us, we worked that shift, started later in the day. And we were there to interview at the authentic time people were going to be working with us. And I had a pot of coffee, there. I knew people be coming from other things they were doing and work, and they'd be exhausted and tired, and they're trying to get motivated for an interview, and they're nervous, and and they're hungry, and I didn't have a lot of money in my budget either. Yes, it was Macy's, but no, my budget didn't allow for all that, so I always at least had the pot of coffee and the fixins for that. I also had what I want all of you to do if you are going to go with what I contend you should have as your own job fair. I made sure I had the best staff from the best departments behind me, so they were there to answer any questions. They were there to evaluate and see who we were interviewing and what we were asking, and they were going to give me feedback on that. Just because I thought I understood everything that was wanted in that particular position, I can't know everything that you want authentically, but drivers do. Have you ever had any of your drivers sit in on any of your interviews? How has that gone? Anybody want to share? It's gone well.
Very well, yes, sir.
Anything that in particular, did they give you feedback and when you asked them to, like, besides participating in it, or?
I've had drivers participate in the interview process after, of course, we vet the backgrounds and everything else to get people involved and to determine where they would fit best in what kind of service. Whether they're better with ADA paratransit, whether they're better with fixed route, whether they're better with a more rough fixed route crowd or a more tame fixed route crowd. And this was in the Reno and Las Vegas area. And we would actually vet people to determine what shift they best fit on.
Perfect. Not just because I like the answer and that's what I wanted to hear, but I mean, it really does work. I mean, that's great. Would you like to share anything about your approach on that?
I was going to say at Rock Region Metro, we do have our in-house job fairs. We have one once a month. We alternate days from Fridays to Saturdays. And at the job fairs, we have members that drive buses, specifically our president of the union. She actually comes in and sits in on the job interview. And so the past job fairs that we've had, if we had 20-something people show up, over half of them end up in the classes and end up as new drivers.
Who doesn't like that statistic and ratio? I mean, that's phenomenal. Thanks for sharing that. Did you want to add anything else from your?
One of our challenges, we're a governmental institution. We're a division of the state, higher education.
Yep.
And job fairs are great, but a lot of times we're limited into just giving out information. It's not like we're permitted through current HR processes to do immediate interviews.
Talk to me about that as an HR person. You're not going to let me dictate that to you anymore. We've got openings. We've got things to fill. Look at what we're doing and the impact on that. Come on, Karen. Get on board with the HR person.
I got you. Come speak with me.
But that's what I mean. I mean, we have to be more assertive that way. We're the ones who are going to have to say, we have to come up with something that's going to work better than what it is. I don't want to be delaying getting this job hired. I know you don't. You're not accusing Karen of trying to, hold you back, whatever my name is, hold me back from that. But you're just trying to say to me, we can do better. Let's agree to this. We have this many open positions, the impacts that we have, we've had to cut routes, we had to do that. No, we're not accepting that anymore. We're coming out of COVID. We're doing better in this. We're doing our best to try to elevate our salary. You work with me on that, Karen. We got below where we used to be. I'd like to have more to offer. Yes, I would. And I'm happy to talk about that. But, part of this has to be, my processes have to still support you. I can't be a barrier. And I know it's not an easy battle. I'm not saying it is. But if you took one thing out of the 5 critical things you identified, the very most critical piece of where I'm holding things up, and say, let me just mention, these are the 5 things I'd like you to do. No way, what? Well, I'm just saying I'm being reasonable. This is the most critical one, and we have to get there on this. And I'm really not going to back down on that. I don't want you to hate my face. I don't want you to want to avoid me coming in here. But this is the one, let's all get this done, because this is where I have to land it. Okay? So maybe that kind of approach.
I just got one question.
No, don't like the mic. Yeah.
Our facility is based on a nonprofit. We're a nonprofit organization.
Right.
We're set pretty well on a tight budget, but we have to monitor quite often. How can we use that to help kind of recruit other drivers?
Before I give you that answer, which I think we've covered a bit of that, but anybody else want to share that from their perspective working within their nonprofit world? Good, we have a volunteer hand going up. That's always promising.
Hey everybody, good morning. I'm Steve Roberts. I work with CareLink here in North Little Rock. We're a nonprofit as well. We sell them on the mission and what we're supporting and stuff, taking care of the people and stuff. We focus more around seniors, getting them to and from their medical appointments and whatnot. So we try to sell them on the atmosphere. Yeah, you're not going to get rich doing what we do. We're not in it for the money, but we're in it for taking care of people. And that's kind of really what we push, is just the atmosphere, the group of people you're going to be working with. You're going to go home and feel good about what you do every single day, helping folks. So that's kind of where we focus in on. And that seems to work well for us.
Our facility is people with special needs. We employ special needs, and then we have drivers that take them from home to the facility, from facility to home. So it's very hard to try to find good people, because we're only set to have so many full-time people and sometimes part-time. And we get some people in that they just realize, this is really not kind of what I'm up for. I mean, because we do go on some very back road country. We're in a little small town in Arkansas, so.
So I say you authentically want to have videos and things that show what it's like. To wait until somebody's hired and go through that investment and that process and have them leave is not where you want to be. So as authentically as we can show that with our drivers who are experiencing that, the new mix, like I said, new people who've started and are saying this is what it's been like for me, as much as the veteran person who also says, this is what I've got from it and this is what it means, is the way to reinforce. Words are not enough. Seeing it, hearing it from those in that work is very critical, I feel, so that you are not taking those critical dollars and having such a turn of people, as much as we can identify and share that with others. So with your own job fair, as I said, it can be on site, what I call the traditional way now, of doing something where you have a day at time, you're having signs outside your building, you're putting it on your website, you're putting it on that new driver page you created and all of that. You're putting it on your Indeed or any other social medias websites you're using. And there might be some that you all like much better than the examples I've given, whatever's been working for you. But the more you use, the farther out it goes. So for all of that, you can do something through Zoom, or Google Meets or whatever you like to use, and hold your job fair that way. This is something that you might not be comfortable with, that you've never done before, but it is absolutely another really good approach to do to try to immediately get people to sign up. So I responded online to your applications. And when I did, you would want to reach back to me and say, you can join us on a Zoom meeting that we're holding on this date. It's your job fair date. And I have these following slots still open, because hopefully you have some you've already scheduled in there. And you're going to have a team of people with you. I think the key tool that we want to remember is to educate those leaders in our organization that you want to be able to interview and help with the interview process, including the few of you who are doing that with your drivers. You went over with them. These are the kind of questions we're asking. This is what we're looking for. This is what we're trying to learn. Anything we're missing, anything you think we should be including in this. That's how you kept them connected with their relevance to why you wanted them there. And so all these abilities to do this by not just face-to-face, but capturing them, having some people meet with you that way, that could be your first interview. I understand if many of you said, that wasn't enough, Karen, to just do a Zoom chat remotely. I still wanted to have more of a formal meeting. This is could be considered to some of you your first big step of screening. That's already behind you. You did this job fair. You did this set day. You did this set time. You held it every week. You hold it when you want, but it's yours and just your agency. No other competitors with you then. Most people have told me, and I found it the same thing back in my day too, that a job fair with a mixture of people didn't pull me anything but some nice chats, and that was about it, to a few limited amount of people, and it wasn't getting me the quality people that I was looking for. I'd rather control my own. So I want you to push yourself and look at using the capabilities, because you get a stronger turnout the more you have something structured around that. Process, yeah. But at the end of all this, that agency who couldn't do pullout, we went over every single step and every human being that they used and pulled in to do everything they did to interview and hire people. We found the bottlenecks. And then we took the time, because it was a crisis, people are more open in a real crisis to trying to do things differently, to structure things and redo things based on a proven approach. It wasn't just theory, it was proven, and had been successful in other agencies to do this, and then we recalibrated things. So I would also say of a task perhaps you want to consider is, let's look at our process and what we're doing, and anything that delays things or takes too long, is there anything I can work around that? For example, some agencies were telling me the DOT physicals they needed, that during this time of priorities of COVID, I had a hard time getting things scheduled, Karen. I couldn't always get things when I needed things, and so that was a big delay of game for me, which makes sense to all of us, for those of you who had that impact. I said, is that the same doctor you're going to stay with forever? Are there other offices you can approach? Is there anyone else in your community? I understood they had a great relationship for a long time with this particular office, doctor's office. You know, they didn't want to leave that. But I said, it's one of two things. Either I can incentivize them with a little more money and kind of bump us up in the cha-cha line and try to get this done quicker, or I have to look for other places to go. I can't be delayed by this part of the process. I have to look at other capabilities. And so that's what they wound up doing. I said, you can say to this person who might be very disappointed, weren't we here for you all this time? Didn't we do this work? We're partners with each other in this community. This hurts us to not have you want to be with us. And you're going to have to say to them, I appreciate and understand that, but I'm in a lot of pain right now that I'm losing people who I can't hire. And I understand you don't have the ability to do it. Let's see if we can circle around later. If you feel there's a time where you're open, right? You get the idea, and you're open again, and we can make this work. So you're not trying to destroy a relationship and never, and hurt or harm or make that impact in your community. But you have a business to run for profit or not, so do they. And so either you can step up and do this, and I understand if you can't, but I have to find out what else I can do. So that was opening up that bottleneck. Background checks. Oh, yay, another favorite topic. So background checks. So some of you in doing background checks and all the things that every state, of course, every state has different particulars and the positions and what you need for background checks. So nationally, CTA has an agreement with IntelliCorp, it's called. It's the largest background check in the world company, from everything from federal government all the way on down. And the reason we went with them was the timeliness of what they do. And many people said to me, the problem was, I don't know where I am standing at a certain point in time. Am I 2 days away from having that get approved? Am I 2 hours away? Nothing was giving me that kind of feedback. At least we always knew, it's not at least, but with IntelliCorp, you could go into that system as much as you wanted, or they'd email you if you didn't check it frequently, and they'd tell you where you were. It's this amount of days till this is done on this part, these 3 are cleared, this one's still out there, this is the time, so forth. So you want timeliness of your background checks, we all do. And if you're not currently getting that, you want to find a company that's going to keep you up to date on where things are in that process. Let's not get into the entry-level CDL part, in which you're all, I know, being tortured with that right now. But, there's all these different aspects where I'm saying, process on the practical paperwork side, process when it comes to getting someone on board and getting this personnel person here to do better to support you in some key areas. And I know it's not easy with county and city governments who say it's kind of my way or the highway kind of approach, and you're trying to negotiate with them some things like a shorter application, and I'll still have them do the long one after that first step if I'm going to hire them. At least give me that, would you? I'm not saying they're not going to, if we're hiring them, they're going to do the whole application. I just need a short one right now. And this is why. Not just asking you, this is the impact of this. So I can get someone and I can fill my positions. So, shout out to Ann. How am I on time? Okay, thank you. Other things to consider, 80% of drivers apply for a position using their cell phone in our industry. 80%. So is your application, have you used it on your mobile phone? Have you made sure it's mobile phone accessible and usable? So knowing that and having done that, that was my next suggestion. Please share that with everyone.
We developed a QR code to where passengers can use their cell phone, and automatically it takes them to the website so they can fill out their application. And that's been successful as well.
That is the reality, QR codes of a whole world that it opens up for you. The one-stop shop of a quick immediacy of something. So even the smallest agency saying, I have no idea where I'd start with this QR. I've seen them, I know what they are, but where I would start and what I would look for with this. Would you like to be emailed about that? Thumbs up. So that capability is really key. I'm a big fan of the QR codes. And some will love it and use it, and that's okay. You got a lot of other choices in a lot of other ways. So 80% of drivers are using their cell phones. Don't almost all of your drivers have cell phones with them when they're out doing their work for you anyway? Right? Hopefully not using them, we know, no joke about it, at the wrong time and in the wrong way, but it's with them. So you might be saying, oh great, now they're looking at other places to apply to work that they can use with their phone too. Yes, that's possible. I'm not denying that, neither would you. But, quite honestly, knowing that that's how most people are applying is using their cell phones, take a look at yours, see your application, open it up and see how friendly is it. Just because you've been told by your, wow, if you're big enough to have a marketing department, communications department, congratulations. But if somebody told you that, is it really true? How does it look when it's opened up and somebody sees that? That really is going to matter. There's so much that can be said in the world of using that capability of your cell phone that I'd like you to consider something now. This is something that I call it a driver advisory committee. You might call it anything else, but you want to have feedback from drivers and how they feel about the work they're doing, their peers. It's so critical. And to do that, like I said, your ads, when we talk about retention and retaining people, and we're talking about the current programs you have to recognize or reward, the best programs are developed by the people that you want to have the impact as to the meaning and the value of that. That's the best impact you can have. So, having the ability to have a committee of new and veteran and all mixing types of drivers in there to give you feedback on a consistent basis. There has to be a purpose when you have a committee. What are we here for? What are you looking for from us? What do you want us to do? It's going to tie in with recognition that we talk about after this, and that I'm a true believer also in something I call a mentor or buddy program, to not lose those new drivers when they come in. So having an advisory committee to talk about all aspects from the perspective of your drivers, today's drivers, how they look at the world, what mattered with them, the new people who came to you and why they wanted to work with you, is something that is of great value and also supports the fact that I believe you actually want to listen to us and hear something from us. So, when I talk later on about retention and a buddy/mentor program, this is the perfect committee that could be in support of that, or might even be some of the members of a program like that. But in either case, I hope you will agree there's a great value in having a purpose and a focus of a group of drivers to represent today's world and how they see it, and not just our leadership perspective on things. So if you were thinking of adding another cafeteria plan item, like I said, to your offerings of things that aren't the traditional way, probably chances are good a committee like that came up with that idea and said, this is what we're hearing, and we helped develop something around that you asked us to. And you always, and I always know as a driver in that committee, it doesn't mean everything I recommend is going to be acted upon, can be, will be. That's part of the understanding of a committee. That's, it's not something that always leads to something, though we'd like it to, or it might eventually. But in either case, having that kind of feedback and input is really, really critical. So, let's talk about some aspects of recruitment and sourcing of drivers that I hope realistically is something that resonates with all of you. When's the last time you looked at your job descriptions and how that reads? most of them, when I look at them and someone says, here, Karen, here's our job descriptions, I'm looking at multiple pages. Do you think everybody who's looking for a job or working for you currently has read through all those pages of everything that's there? I mean, no. Right? But what you do want is a description that on the very, very top page says what you're looking for that's critical, so it'll be seen. And even more important than that, I think you'd agree, is you want to make sure that you define the attitude you're looking for in a driver. You cannot train attitude. No one can train attitude. You can train me skills, and you will train me skills, right? You've got training programs when I'm newly hired as to how you want me to drive and what's required and safety and all those key factors, but there's nothing you can do to change my attitude. So the number one thing is, what is the attitude you want for your agency, for your drivers? And how do I ask interview questions around that? And how do I listen 70% of that interview and not feed them all the answers and tell them this is what I'm 100% looking for, and good interviewers can just parrot that right back. Back in time, people used to tease me and say, I think you could interview to be like a nuclear physicist and you'd probably get hired for the job. I said, yeah, I know how to listen to people. I know what they identify they're looking for. They give it all away to me. And yes, I've done this right for decades. I know what to say back. And yes, I could be hired for that job and they'd think I had all the skills and capabilities for it. And then they'd wonder why I was a terrible hire when I epically failed, right? The next day, you're like, get her out of here. She can't be doing this job. You know, but I mean, in a teasing kind of way, I think the attitude is that everywhere that I can see that attitude in what I'm looking at when I'm looking at your driver webpage, when I'm seeing the authentic vision of those videos that say what people are doing. So what would you share with me are the attitudes you're looking for in drivers? What are the key attitudes you're looking for? I'm sorry, what was that again? Compassionate. Good one. What else?
Friendly.
Sorry? Friendly. All right, what else? Honesty, okay. Understanding. What else for attitudes? Flexible, I heard flexible. Okay, and there was something else being called out? Patient. There's another one I heard, I thought. Attitudes. Okay, so putting that up there in the abbreviated way that most of you I know in the room are going, yeah, that and some other things you thought of for your agencies. Is that reflected in your job description in some way? And like I said, at the top of the page, toward the top, where people are still looking at it because they're not reading this long list of all these other things that keep going on for pages and pages. Now, you can incorporate that into your new hire orientation and what you're training with me, all those aspects of the job description, and you will. But literally what I'm going to read, realistically, if any of you currently feature on your webpage a job description, just know those words are not being read to the end of the description. Nobody is. But if toward the top you said, I'm looking for someone friendly, willing to help people in our community, or, you know, however you describe that. Now the question is, how does that reflect in your ads? I reached out to Indeed.com, like I shared with you, and I said, what is the best ad that had the best click-through and the most responses from what you document behind the scenes of all this work? Can you share with me that agency? And the good news was they're a member of ours too. It was Ride Connection in Portland, Oregon. And I said, I'm going to call them and ask them. So pre-pandemic, their ad read something like this. The driver is the heart and soul. First key words. Remember I told you, people looking on social media are not just looking at a job title like a classified ad like they used to in the old days. They really are looking for keywords. So it read, again, the driver is the heart and soul of our transportation program. The service provided by the driver helps older adults and people with disabilities. Next keywords, live independent, quality lives by providing them access to necessary community services. The driver provides transportation services using our agency's vehicles. Again, not assuming people knew when it comes to driving that they would know, oh, we provide the vehicles. They said, who knows what people interpret that as who've never worked in the industry. So they thought it was important to say that. And the last sentence, the driver reports to, assists, and works cooperatively with a transportation coordinator. They probably all thought, I don't know what a transportation coordinator is, but okay. And the next key words, providing safe and efficient transportation to customers who have no other choice. So I said, so you're telling me, again, people were looking for a position for a driver where they keyed on the words heart, soul, live independent, quality lives, providing safe and efficient. They said those were the words they hovered over. Those are the words that they were reading more into and spending time on that ad before applying. When I talk with Ride Connection, they have a large volunteer transportation program because they connect to, in that area in Oregon, to Portland, Oregon, and a whole bunch of small rural services all the way up to Portland. And I said, what are your openings like? We don't have any openings. I said, how long have you not had openings? We never have openings. We have waiting list. I said, you have a waiting list. Okay. I said, when you follow up with that waiting list on occasion, because people leave, they go, everybody does. They said, and you know, people drop off, right? Of course. I mean, they're not waiting forever for Ride Connection. But they said, when I reach out to them and they say, oh, now you have an opening? Yes, we're one of those agencies that people would come to us and leave the other position for to come to work for us. So we always followed up even with those who were not interested until they really confirmed they're not. I said, so no openings, all the time waiting lists. That's amazing. That's rare. And that's phenomenal. They said, but we actively work on this all the time. We're reaching out to those agencies even with no openings, those people, not agencies, people, and letting them know what's going on. We'd send them a little link to our web page, a little overview of a new video of a driver. And if they want to unsubscribe, they will. But otherwise, we're just kind of keeping fresh in their mind. We're still Ride Connection. We're still a community service. We still matter in the community. You were interested in us. Little tickler things. We do that. So that's kind of cool. Okay, I like that. After the pandemic, I went back and asked Indeed, out of all the ads you have in transit, what's the best ad? What gets the most clicks and openings? Ride Connection. I said, oh, okay. So this is what it looks like during the pandemic now and how they describe what they're doing. Join our team, exclamation point. Ride Connection is a nonprofit agency serving a diverse population. And we place here's the word searches people are looking at, high emphasis on diversity and inclusion in our workplace. Next keywords, staff are valued. Those three words together for the experience and unique viewpoints they bring to the job. Next words that were looked at, our culture is one of next words bolded, empowering our employees, building collaborative teams, next keywords, and encouraging a good work-life balance. Isn't that what we're hearing across the whole Great Resignation, are these terms? You can't just put the words on paper, can you? You have to have your work and culture and environment be like that. And she said, we've done a lot of work around that during this time of quieter, in many ways, times during COVID. Things fell off for us too, like they did for everybody else. And so they ended with, we offer flexible work schedules. They felt they've designed a benefit package that has a lot of non-traditional capabilities that they offer, so they felt it was competitive, and generous paid time off. To apply for an open position, please download, complete, and return the job application to, and they had an email address and a link and so forth. So the key words: high emphasis on diversity and inclusion, staff are valued, our culture, empowering our employees, collaborative teams, good work-life balance. Where's all the stuff about driving and what they're going to be doing and all that? No. Wow, what kind of driver the heck ad is that? None of that is there. I said, what are your openings like? No openings. I said, do you still have that waiting list? We have a waiting list. I said, okay, so you have totally restructured not only the words in your ad, but have done intentional work around what she said. I'm in Portland, Oregon, Karen. I got Google here. I got Amazon there. I got every top tech company like Seattle does here. I got to do a lot of work to try to have people come to work at our nonprofit for salaries. I can't touch those bonuses and all that stuff. Please, come on. You know, she said, but what I can say is this is a very inclusive culture, and I visited their property a few times over the years because a past member of our board of directors, she's retired now, Elaine Wells, had us visit and spend time there and see their area. But the key thing I hope you're taking away is ads that were before said in a certain way and looked a certain way, if your ads are still looking and reading like that, that's probably not a good sign. And that could be why you're not having that kind of pull. What is your culture like now? What is it that you're looking for in drivers? And can you really trust yourself to have the right application, the right job description, to let that speak for itself and say what people are caring about more who are looking to come out of their hibernation or not working, which is more about the culture, the environment, and who they're serving as drivers, rather than literally, I'm going to drive and do this and that kind of what you would expect traditionally in the past has been the way we've said that. So I'd like you to consider that in terms of how and what's being said, and ask your new drivers. If they say to you, you should show them this. This is what I do that I think is amazing, and so do 3 of my other colleagues that I've talked about this with. Okay, how do we get that into the ad now? As much as your veteran drivers. This is more of what you're going to find now of what people are looking for to apply is, what's that environment, what's that in culture, included in, I'm not denying, pay, benefits, and that doesn't go away. But this is more in your nonprofit world, what you're wanting to say of who we are and what we do, and having that resonate with people with the attitude that you're looking for, okay? So a lot of this, feel good, you're doing a lot of these things. It's just time to revisit some things sometimes and get that fresh perspective that new drivers you've been hiring or people you've been interviewing can tell you as well. How are we doing for time, Ann? Whew. We made it. Any thoughts, comments, questions anybody wants to bring forward? There's that infamous microphone on the stand I know you love, but there's this handheld one too.
I have a question here from Kelly Bass with Rainbow of Challenges. She says that she'd like you to touch a little bit more on pay. Their turnover comes primarily from lack of hours and low pay. What's a good rate of pay for a driver and an aide? And also, what are your thoughts on placing drivers on salary as opposed to hourly wages?
Have any of you placed drivers onto something that's in a salaried environment? Yes, Adam. I'll answer in a moment.
Our positions are considered salary, but they're actually paid on an hourly basis and still eligible for overtime, according to FLSA regulations. It's a state classification, so it's a bit of an interesting piece. So I've never heard of a straight salary driver. I would like to see what that looked like.
Me either. I have to be honest, I haven't either for drivers. So, you know, it's harder for me nationally. I could say something that isn't relevant to you here in Arkansas. So that's the one thing I will say. But many people ask the right question, which is, well, where do I get that data to try to figure out how to do something with salary? So I do know, Karen, I can see the sign outside McDonald's, they're paying X, you know, or I can see the sign here that they're paying Y. Okay, so I can read those signs like anybody can in my community. But I do believe it's important and to mention a relationship that I believe many will say, I have that relationship, but maybe I'll do a little more intentional work around it. Every state calls it something different. Back in my day, it was what was called the unemployment office, perhaps, but having a relationship with the economic development or with those that are helping to fill positions, I would have intentional meetings when I not only had open positions, but even when I had no positions to fill, that happens at times, but I intentionally met at least on a monthly basis as to, in this case, I would for my driver openings and say, this is what I'm looking for attitude and some of these other capabilities. We'll get into the practical parts if we interview anyone you recommend to us. But overall, I want to partner with you and let you know what I'm looking for within my driver positions and openings. The following things I really must have, or certain things that, in general, I want you to know. And that would help them do a little pre-screening for me before people came over to us. And anytime I updated anything, I would always give that to that office and say, this has changed, that's changed, this is what's new now. And I would always, they wanted feedback as to how many people did we interview and hire from that. We have to have the courtesy of letting them know that, because they're doing part of that work for us in making those recommendations that we're looking to interview with people. So what CTA did back last was in 2018, the end of 2018, was a national survey of all positions that you have in your agency and nationally gathered data and did an analysis and said this is what the wages came to. And that's to yesterday now. And we're doing that again in 2022, toward the end of 2022. But that's, again, the national. You're looking to find what is going on in your communities, like that person asked. How do I determine the right hourly wage beyond what I see hanging on signs that I'm driving by? And come up with something that would have people respond and want to look when that's part of their consideration. We all know if that's the only consideration someone has, we're not the right business to be working in because we're never going to pay to that level, and you'll barely be with us and you'll be on to something else. So that can't, if that's 100% your driving force, for whatever reason it is, there's no disparaging it. It just is what's important to someone. You're the first to say that'll never have you be happy here then if that's really the number one factor for you. So having said all that kind of background around it, I always say, I went to that economic development office. I was part of a team of HR directors in all kinds of businesses, because again, that was a position established in that organization. So my responsibility was to be the member of the Society for Human Resource Managers, which I recommend anybody who has an HR department should always be a member of that national group. And then I was a member of the state level group as well. And I was regularly in meetings with them. And holding back what salaries were didn't make sense. We shared that amongst each other. I mean, they know we'd find it one way or the other. Let's not play games. So we would discuss that, and then I'd adjust it accordingly. So if that person is fortunate to have an HR person, they should be a member of that and getting that data more immediate than a national kind of overview does. So that's my thoughts. Thanks, Ann.
Thank you, Karen. We're going to start back at 10:15, and Karen will be back to talk about retention. Thank you.